So today we'll discuss about the Terraform dependencies. Even we have the dependencies, implicit dependencies, explicit dependencies, and very importantly, we have resources dependencies across the modules also. So we need to understand the dependencies across the modules. First, we are going to understand implicit dependency. What is the meaning of implicit dependency is like internally in the AWS wise itself, we have some dependencies and Terraform knows that order. And like say, suppose we have a VPC and the subnet, like implicit automatically, like VPC need to create initially. After that, that VPC ID has been attached to the subnet. That's the reason subnet is going to be created later. Say in this also, like we have an EC2 instance, and that's where attaching a security group. Okay, so now here we have one resource group, and that resource group also I have to attach. If I don't attach this resource group to any of that uh, VPC, by default it goes to, by default that goes to default VPC. The security group is going to default VPC. Otherwise, explicitly I can specify. First, I can create a VPC that is also comes under implicit dependency itself. But in this use case, we have an security group. Okay, and what is the name of the security group from Terraform wise we have given is web_sg. And like that, while creating an instance, say here I have specified this. Okay, that security groups I have used web_sg dot name. I'm going to specify with this, like a Terraform understands, like first it need to create EC2 instance or security group. Which resource it need to create? VPC or security group or EC2 instance.
Which one you're talking about? This one here, we need to assign security group.
No. Say, yeah, first which resource will get created? Security group or instance in this? Say here to this resource, the security group we have attached, and that security group is already like in our configuration file. When we do the plan and apply, which resource is getting created?
Instance will be created.
First instance or security group?
First it will create security group and
security
then it will
group. After that, yeah, this is the example for implicit dependency. How we are going to maintain the implicit dependencies? So by using that resource IDs or names in the next resource, if you specify, Terraform understands. Okay, so that dependency we have, and first what is the resource it need to create that's created. Okay, so then like how we can use that, I'll tell one example. So now here we have a VPC and this VPC ID we are going to attach to subnet. Okay, otherwise I created the subnet and I'm going to attach a network interface to my subnet. Okay, otherwise that subnet ID I'm attaching to an EC2 instance, or to the EC2 instance I'm not attaching a subnet, I'm attaching network interface. With all these, what is going to happen is, indirectly we are attaching the implicit dependencies, and while creating the first resources are getting created, later the actual resources which we want we are going to create. Okay, so in these use cases, okay, we no need to specify explicit dependencies. Terraform automatically will understand that. Terraform automatically will understand. Okay, but when we want to specify that explicit dependency is, okay, so now here in the above use case, Terraform AWS_instance dot web_server uses AWS_security_group dot web_sg dot name. Then like it automatically creates that security group before the EC2 instance. Explicit dependency by using depends_on is not required. but we have two resources. There is no reference between or no relation between those two resources. But business-wise, I have the dependency. In that use case, say business-wise, we have the dependency. In that use case, we need to specify the depends on. Say in that use case, we need to specify the depends on feature. Okay, so for this, what we need to do is, like here I have one resource like instance DB. Okay, but if I want to create, say suppose here I'll take an example of S3 bucket and IAM policy. S3 bucket and IAM policy. So in this, we need to create one resource S3 bucket. Okay, so then IAM policy, and in that IAM policy, I'm going to like specify depends on. Okay, so if I specify this one, in which resource I'm specifying this? In IAM policy, I'm going to specify. If I specify this depends on feature, then IAM policy is going to create, or sorry, policy attachment is going to create, or S3 bucket is going to create. So if I use the depends on feature, explicit depends on, in this use case, say suppose I have a IAM policy
Policy will
attachment.
create because it depends upon the S3 bucket, right?
Say in this use case, this policy role attachment is going to create, or S3 bucket is going to create. Say which one
Depend
is going to create in this
policy
use case?
attachment.
Say in this resource block, I kept depends underscore on, which is the explicit dependency. If I specify this one, which resource is getting created in this use case?
Role policy attachment.
First role policy attachment will create, or S3 bucket will create?
S3 bucket.
No, first which resource will create? Bucket or IAM role policy attachment?
But dependence means like it's solid bucket already created. Then only it will be IAM policy will create it, right?
That IAM policy is different. Say here we have three resources.
Oh, okay.
So this is IAM policy.
Okay.
So IAM policy and S3 we don't have, but this policy attachment to that IAM policy we are attaching. But what is my requirement is that S3 bucket also, like explicitly I have dependency, but internally there is no relation. Okay, so there is no relation in this use case. First, this S3 bucket need to be created. So if I use the depends underscore on, that S3 bucket need to be created. After that, that need to be attached to. After that, that need to be attached to that IAM role policy attachment need to do. Okay, if we have that kind of explicit dependencies, okay, so we need to specify depends underscore on. If it is internal dependency, then we no need to specify anything. By adding that in the resource details itself, we are going to specify. With that, we are going to attach to that. With that, we are going to attach. Okay, so this is the example of, say here this policy used that S3 bucket ARN, but that resource is not existing. Okay, so then like depends on will create first that bucket, and after that itself that is going to be attached. Okay, so like this here we are going to make like that policy also is going to be like we are confirming business wise. First S3 bucket need to create, otherwise it would be waiting for that bucket. Okay, so now we need to use this like one module like a dependency. We may need to use in another module also. That means assume we have one use case, we have one VPC, one module, and EC2 is one module. Then in that VPC, whatever the module I have used, that module I want to copy to that resource I want to use in another module. How to call that? We'll discuss. So that meaning is one resource module or one module resource, like we need to call or we need to use in the another one. Okay, so how to use that also we'll discuss. And what is the advantage of Terraform modules? What is the advantage of Terraform modules? So modules are the containers of a group of resources, and we can use those modules like for the reusability, or we want to use across the multiple environments also when we want to use. So we are going to specify those modules. We are going to specify those modules. We are going to specify. What is the advantage with that? What is the advantage? More reusability we are going to get compared to other environments. So when we want to use the multiple environments, instead of creating multiple resources, we are going to call the modules. So we are going to call the modules we are going to call. Okay, so that is the main advantage of using modules. Okay, so then here we'll create how the folder structure would be. So now here, what is the module name? So what is the Terraform module name? Like here we have like a Terraform hyphen VPC. Okay, then in that we are going to keep main.tf, variables.tf. Okay, so what are the other resources we are going to keep? We are going to keep maybe backend.tf, providers.tf, like this, all those we are going to keep. Now, we are going to use that same VPC module either from the dev and even from the production also I'm going to call. Okay, so now here, how this module we are going to create, we'll discuss. So now here in the modules, VPC, I'm going to declare the main.tf, and in that main.tf, I'm going to use like all the resources I'm going to use, and that values also I'm going to pass. Okay, so these all, then outputs also have used. Okay, what is output value we have used here? VPC ID and public subnets. Then I'm going to, what is this meaning of this? So this is my dev environment. I'm using the provider is AWS. Okay, which module I'm going to use? Module slash VPC. I'm calling this module, and whatever the module name we are giving is VPC underscore dev, and this is the source, and I have given the CIDR block, public subnets, agents. Okay, same module. Okay, I'm going to use for VPC underscore production also. So same module we are using for VPC underscore production also. So what is the advantage here we are going to get with the modules?
Specific to reuse.
Yeah, reuse. Okay.
Here, if the module got changed by somebody, suppose like there is a one module and one project has done some changes and
Next apply that definitely those changes will be reflected.
reflected, right? Yeah.
Yes, yes. If any changes, in order to avoid that one itself, we are going to maintain the versions also.
Yes.
So in order to avoid that kind of things, we are going to use the version. Then if you specify the older version itself is your use case, that version we are going to use. The newer version you don't specify.
Oh, okay.
You got it right?
So you mean to say that, for example, there is a model created with version 1 and
Yes.
another project created version 2.
I don't want version 2 as of now for my resources. You can continue with
Oh, okay.
version 1 itself.
I mean, do we need to mention the version 1, something like that?
Yes, yes. In that source we have specified, right?
Okay.
And we need to use that versions also we need to specify even while downloading that registry also. We are going to specify the which version if you want also, because if you don't specify, it downloads latest version, it is going to specify. Once we specify the source, normally here we can specify version, we can specify here. Even in the registry also, they're going to maintain those different versions, they're going to maintain.
I mean, how do we see that? Like, I mean, the one model is created with one version, and the changes for
The
the version.
registry they're going to provide.
Okay, but
The-
registry will be the same for either.
Not same like that VPC Terraform AWS VPC module will have lot of versions.
Okay. CDA. Okay.
Okay, in the registry also they're going to maintain multiple versions. If you don't specify, it's going to download that latest version.
Okay.
But if you want to specific that version itself is required, that version we can specify.
Okay. Got it.
Or locally that GitHub we can use those. Okay, so now what is the main benefits of using the modules is we are going to get the reusability, consistency, and even versioning is also. And each environment can have their own variables and their own state files also we are going to maintain. That is the advantage. Already in our VPC module, say here we have the VPC module we have, and in that VPC module we are going to specify like main.tf we have, and in that we created one. Say in that we have created one resource like resource AWS underscore VPC, then AWS underscore subnet. Okay, so then we have variables.tf outputs, and we reuse that modules in that dev. We have used one main.tf, and for the production also we have used one main.tf. Okay, so now I'm going to use one more module. That module is EC2 module. I'm going to use EC2 module I'm going to use. So then in the modules, have developed one more module name EC2, and that main.tf I'm going to create the resource. Okay, so then here one thing is that subnet ID, from where we need to get that subnet ID, from where we are getting. Okay, so whenever I'm going to use that module, so now here I'm going to I'm going to pass this module.vpc underscore dev and public underscore subnets. Try to understand here. So here already we have like a dev environment. I'm going to use module VPC dev, and this is the module VPC. And if I give two subnets are getting created, and AZ1A, 1B. Okay, and if I go to that VPC, also, my VPC, like we have main.tf, right? In that VPC main.tf also, like here we have like count. This count is coming from the variables. So in that scenario, it's going to create two variables. Okay, then same VPC we are attaching. How we'll get that count, I'll explain. And cider also based on the index we are going to keep, and available zone also we are going to create. So now, while using that module, try to understand here we have that module, right? In this module, how we are going to use is, yeah. So now here cider block is 10.0, and I given two subnets and two available zones I have passed in my module. So with this, how many subnets are getting created? How many subnets are getting created?
Two.
Two subnets are getting created, and one subnet will get this, and this subnet will get this cider block, and two are going to two different zones also. Then here try to understand, when I'm going to use EC2 dev, okay, this scenario you need to understand. Okay, what is this? Module dot VPC underscore dev dot public underscore subnet underscore IDs 0. What is that 0 index means? To the first subnet it is going. If you want to make it into second subnet, instead of 0, what I need to do? Instead of that 0, what I need to do there? What I need to provide there? One I need to give. So now this is in the VPC module. Try to understand this public underscore subnet underscore IDs we have, right? So where we have defined this in the VPC module, have declared this output value. Okay, what is the output name I have given? Public underscore subnet underscore IDs. Okay, so this output from my dev environment, what is the module name I have used this? What is the module name I have used this here? Try to understand here. Module dot VPC underscore dev. What is this VPC underscore dev? In our dev module, we are going to use this name. Module VPC underscore dev, and this is the source. And when I create the subnet, two output values I'm creating, and that output value I'm attaching to EC2 module subnet, module dot VPC underscore dev dot public underscore subnet underscore IDs 0. Okay, so how we got that output? How we got that output? In the VPC module, like VPC underscore dev, like when we create that module source, it's going to create two subnets. It is getting created, and for those subnets we got that output IDs, and those IDs we are going to use. Those outputs we are going to get that one. So like this here between the modules, so we are going to declare the output, and that output we are going to call to
I mean, output is just like they give the output values, right? So I
to
mean,
put the output, but that output of that we are using as the input here
okay,
to pass that value. That VPC module output we are attaching to our EC2 module subnet we are attaching, because VPC is one module, EC2 is another module.
yes.
Okay, so like this we can say between the modules how we are going to maintain the dependencies is like this we are going to maintain. So normally if it is a subnet underscore ID equal to what you are going to give is AWS underscore subnet. Okay, that resource ID, like maybe AWS underscore subnet, that subnet ID, what is the name you have given, that ID you are going to pass. But in this, that is not in our state file, not like that. That is the reason.
One thing like this public underscore subnet underscore ID is output of the another VPC, right?
Yeah.
And here again, here we calling VPC dev from the second one. I mean the present VPC. So how
This
to
is
link
we
it?
are in another module. In the EC2 module, we are.
Okay, we are in VPC dev module, right? So before one, what module we? I mean, public underscore subnet underscore ID
So
from which
this is the
module?
module we use, right? Module VPC underscore dev.
Okay, and coming to the public underscore subnet IDs.
That is the output value name in this module we have specified.
Okay.
Say this module source is VPC, right?
Yes.
If you go to this module VPC, if I go to this VPC module, in this I have specified two output values. Okay, in the VPC outputs.tf, one is VPC ID, second one is public underscore subnet underscore IDs. But with modules, when I'm using module dot that module name, then this output value, we are going to get that. Normally, if it is a resource, how we are going to specify is, if it is a resource, normally This is one resource. And while attaching to the instance, what we done? That's AWS underscore security underscore group dot web underscore sg dot name. Or if it is a subnet, you can give the subnet like AWS underscore subnet dot that my subnet dot ID you can pass. But in this use case, subnet is created through one module and EC2 is going to create through another module. Okay, it's not directly the resource. Okay, in that use case, what we need to do is, so once we create that module, once we create that yeah, this one we are going to specify. Subnet underscore ID is, you shouldn't directly give AWS underscore subnet or AWS underscore subnet dot that subnet name dot ID. Don't take. Okay, so what we are using is module dot vpc underscore dev, and this is the output value. That is the output value. So then one module we want to pass to another output. Say suppose if you want to attach to VPC also, try to understand if you want to, I don't want to attach the subnet ID. Okay, so if you want to attach VPC ID, then VPC underscore ID equal to module dot VPC underscore dev. This is the module name what we have given. Then in that VPC like dot ID, something that's we have given in the outputs values. In the output values, what is the VPC ID we have given that we need to provide here. So in this, what is the output we have given is one is public underscore subnet, then output value is VPC underscore ID, VPC underscore ID. That VPC underscore ID we need to give, but the name is module dot our module name, then
Dot VPC underscore ID dot ID.
output value name we are going to attach. Okay, so this is when we are using
Modules.
when we are using the modules like this, we need to pass. Okay, so when we are using the modules like that, we need to pass it. The same thing if you want to create for dev production environment, then here I'll use module VPC underscore prod, then source is same and our own CIDR blocks and our own VPC name, how many subnets you want agents. Then here in this VPC underscore dev, instead of this, our module name what we have used is VPC underscore VPC underscore. So now in this resource name, normally AWS underscore instance dot that resource name. Then what are the arguments we have? Like this we used to pass. But now what we need to do is module dot that module name. Then what is the output value? Okay, that we need to attach this. That we need to attach like this here. One output of Terraform module is going to become the input to, that is going to become the input
Other instance.
to another module.
Module.
Okay, or maybe to other resource is going to pass as a module. Okay, so like this here we are going to maintain the dependencies also. Then in this also, definitely first which module it need to create? VPC module itself is need to create. Otherwise we don't get the subnet ID, right? Okay, but this is also between the modules also. This is something implicit or explicit. Is now this we declare, right? It's an implicit or explicit kind of dependency.
Explicit
Explicit.
depends on
No, no, here we are not using any depends on, right?
implicit then.
That it's a implicit itself. Okay, definitely this need to create which module first? All that VPC modules it need to create. After that, after that
After that instance, subnetted instance.
instance need to create. Okay, and if you have the module
One
wise,
thing like see, even the implicit and explicit, in both examples, I mean implicit example we have specified with subnet. There also subnet created and instance is created. When
yes,
come to explicit dependency, we talk about like again depend on the S3. There also S3
no, no, but in the IAM policy, we don't have any argument to pass that.
Oh, okay.
So here we have this argument subnet ID can be passed.
Okay.
Okay, then if you have any dependencies, like explicit dependencies between the modules, okay, if it is any explicit dependencies between the modules, so now here try to understand, I have one module. What is the name of my module is IAM. I have one module. This is IAM, and I have given my source of this module is like maybe locally in my modules. Like I have my module is IAM is my module name. Okay. So like this, I have created some resources using this module IAM. Then I'm going to use one more module. Okay. That is EC2 is another module. EC2 is another module, and I have given the source. Okay, so but what is my requirement is I have some dependencies, depends underscore on depends, say it's a small letters itself, depends underscore on equal to, okay, so what is my requirement is here module dot IAM. So this is the example for, this is the example for
Explicit dependency
explicit dependencies between modules.
modules.
This is the explicit dependencies between modules also we can configure. Modules also we can specify. I hope you got it right. If you want to specify that dependencies across the modules, okay. So that is one. Excuse me. Say if someone asks about like advantages of outputs, can you tell me in the modules what is the advantages of outputs in the modules? Say that
Sorry.
values we can share across the modules. Okay, say by using the output values. Okay, so that means that VPC ID, that subnet IDs, whatever the outputs we have declared, those output values we are passing to, okay, we are passing to
Other modules.
another module. Okay, other like easy to integrate those also. Means one module output is becoming the input to next module, and with that module dot module name and what is that output value we have, that's we are going to specify as the input value to another one. Okay, so I hope you got it right.
Yes, got it.
Okay, so like this here, that is also one of the advantage of why we need to declare the, so why we need to declare the output values. So input parameters are very useful to pass the values. but output parameters also we have a lot of advantages we have. And here we are discussing the dependency management also, and module wise also we can manage those dependencies. Then here we have module dev, and that output we have like a EC2, and that VPC dev public underscore subnet underscore IDs index we are going to use. So like this we can specify. So now here dependencies wise we have the implicit, explicit, and modules we are going to discuss. Okay, so then here we have we'll discuss one more use case. We have a IAM role, okay, in the module. Okay, so now here this is the EC2 module. We have an EC2 instance and IAM instance profile. Okay, so then instance, and that instance profile has been attached. So this, can you tell me, this is implicit or explicit? This dependency is the implicit dependency or explicit dependency?
Implicit.
Okay, so that is an implicit dependency itself, because in that resource block, in that documentation, we have the option to configure that IAM underscore instance underscore profile. Okay, if you don't have that option, then we need to specify business wise. If you have that demand, then that we need to specify as an explicit dependency. Okay, in we don't have a direct dependency. Okay, then we need to use, say, suppose here we have a load balancer target group and listener. Okay, that listener we are going to configure that target group. Okay, say depends on. Okay, so like this, if are depends on features. Here we have two resources also, multiple resources also. If you have those all, we can specify in commas, because if you want to do the peering, first two VPCs I want to create. Okay, so like this, here we can specify the multiple resources also we can specify. So in the modules also we have the dependencies in the modules also, but it takes some time to understand. But going forward, we are going to use the modules itself. We are going to use the modules itself. We are going to manage. Okay, so now here we have one like VPC module and EC2 already we discussed. So now here in the VPC module, we have the resources. Like this is the VPC module. In that we have AWS underscore VPC and CIDR range and subnets we have given. Why we are using count and all this is, we don't want to use only one subnet. Depends upon the requirement. Like users can pass different values, and security group. Okay, these all in my main.tf we have, and outputs also have created. Then here I'm going to create the variables, and this is another module. Another module is EC2 module we have. EC2 is another module. Okay, and in this we are going to create the subnet IDs, all these. But one module input we are going to call. In this main module, I'm going to say this is my driver kind of thing, or a root module. In this, like my EC2 module and VPC module, I'm going to call them as the child modules. Okay, and that module names I'm giving my own names I'll give, and that source is nothing but like from which that module main.tf, all those resources we are going to use. Okay, so then in this module, I hope this is the source is local source we have, and in that we are going to give the like VPC cider block and two subnets we have used, and we use the another module. Okay, that subnet IDs and security group IDs, from where we are getting those? From the outputs we are going to get those. From the outputs we are going to get that. Okay, so then module like EC2 is depends on this module dependency also is implicit dependency or explicit.
Explicit.
No, that is implicit itself. Because we are not specifying any depends on feature, right, between VPC and this. With that, like that subnet ID, when we attach with the module, module dot AWS underscore
I got it.
VPC, when we
I saw
attach,
that
it's an
it
implicit
depends.
dependency.
I saw it depends on this one, so I thought like,
You got it right?
yeah. And one
Okay.
more thing, like, see, as we said that models can work when we have the previous model should have output. Okay. So if suppose one module doesn't have any output, I mean, we need to specify, I mean, while doing the requirement, we need to specify output as well. I mean, if they don't maintain anything.
Yes, we need to, if you want to pass it, then better to declare them as the outputs.
And suppose like one module, we fill it like that we can use that module for our requirement and there is no output. So we have to return
Yeah, we need to
output for
declare
that
that. If you want to pass that value to another module, then definitely we need to declare as the output value. Okay.
Okay, got it.
So that is the reason subnet IDs, security group IDs as outputs in our VPC module we exposed, and that is used by EC2 module. Because and it doesn't require any depends on also, because it required implicit dependency. Okay, it required implicit dependency. But here we have one more use case. Like here we have uh, S3 is one module, Lambda is one module. Now in the S3 module, I have declared all these values, and so now here, okay, so Lambda function. Okay, in this Lambda function, like whenever we have this S3 module, we created one bucket. Okay, and S3 bucket notification. In that S3 bucket notification, like we are calling one Lambda function. Okay, then S3 bucket need to create, or Lambda function need to create first? Lambda function need to be created, because this S3 while creating it need to call one Lambda function. That Lambda function need to call. Okay, then in this use case, okay, so what is that? What is that dependency is? Lambda should be created. Lambda need to be created, and that is we are going to attach. So in the Lambda function, like it need to create in the Lambda module. Okay, so here we are declaring all these values, and in the root module try to understand. Yeah, this is S3 module we have used, and in the Lambda module, okay, in the Lambda module, like we are specifying that Lambda details all this. Okay, then Lambda module needs S3 bucket ARN for its IAM policy. Okay, in order to avoid this one, like better to use, for which module we need to use? That depends on in that S3 module, will ensure that Lambda function need to be exist before that bucket notification. In this use case, they didn't use the module-wise dependencies. What they have used? Only for the resource itself they have specified. What is that they have specified is in the S3 module that Lambda function exists or not, they're going to keep in the depends on. Okay, in the previous IAM and EC2, what we have done is module wise we kept the dependencies. In this, at the resource level in the S3 module itself, that Lambda function per single function itself they kept depends on. Okay, that is in the one module. Another module resource we are keeping as the dependency. Okay, by using depends on feature, then automatically the dependencies coming between the modules also. By default, the dependency is coming between the modules also, we are going to get it. Okay. So these all going forward while working with the AWS resources like EKS, VPCs. Okay. So we'll have the real use cases. At that moment, we'll discuss more. Okay. So parallelly try to finish those modules. We have the tutorial, right? I have tried to do those module resources. That module tutorial lab have tried to do it.
Yes.
How many?
Actually, I tried initial level itself.
Yeah,
there are
try to finish that. Tomorrow we'll come to those scenarios.
yes. So many.
Dependency is also very important from the understanding wise. Okay, so tomorrow we'll come to that lab.
Sure.
Okay, sure.